Oh, y'all, this one is this is one I've been wanting to talk about for a long time, that every time I find myself grabbing the camera to talk about it, to bring awareness to it, that I find myself either deleting what I've said or putting down the camera or trying to suppress what I've suppressed for so many years. It was what I myself had to endure for a large part of my adulthood on my own. And on top of various other subjects that I had to deal with, that a lot of people have to deal with. You know, we all have our struggles, we all have our issues, you know. But there is something that I carried around with me for now over about 26 years, that really, I guess you could back it up to not really 26 years, but I guess you can really back it up to about 21 years, 22 years maybe. And yeah, and I keep suppressing this. Over my life, I have written in journals and wrote it down just to get it out of my head, just to get it out of my heart. But it has always been an issue that tugged at me, that always hindered me on various areas of my life. And one being forgiveness, one being the ability to forgive, and the fact that I had issues with that I couldn't move past certain things. I couldn't face certain things. I held anger, rage inside my heart that at times did not come across to people that probably shouldn't have had to deal with it because of what I was dealing with and what I did not want others to have to bear the burden of. And mainly, not so much just adults I knew, but just my children, you know. I did not want them to have to bear that weight. You know, but as they got older, they noticed things, and of course, as they became adults, they realized things. And no matter how often you try to keep people from things, life has a way of revealing those things and bringing those things to the forefront. And I believe a big reason why that happened is so that things can be resolved. A solution could come from it. That whatever you went through, no one else has to come or go through whatever it was that you went through. So a lot of times, as I've learned this throughout my life, I've said, you know, you go through things not just for yourself. It might seem like you're going through it for yourself at the time, but you're going through it for whomever God placed in your path, that they might be going through it, or they may avoid going through it. And that your testimony could help the next person, whatever struggle, whatever situation in life. But sometimes things are dumped upon people that they don't even have control over, you know? That, you know, there's so many forms of abuse, and there is physical abuse, there is emotional abuse, there is sexual, you know, I don't know how much of this you can say on YouTube, but sexual abuse, you know, and there is so many different types of abuse that one could endure. There's family abuse. There is secret abuses. There are so many different ways and forms that abuse could take place and to shape and form themselves in that can affect people. And although I myself, I've been a fighter since I can remember me being a fighter. Ain't too many people was going to ever cross me, not without me trying to defend myself, whether it was vocally or whether it was with these hands. I've always been a strong-minded, strong-willed person. And so outright abuses that I could deal with would never come. If it came my way, would get shut down quickly. And if I ever saw it happen to a loved one and I could do anything about it, I stepped in. In fact, it didn't even have to be a loved one. I know a lot of times growing up in school, a lot of fights I've gotten into was not even my own fights. I fought for a lot of people because they felt like they could not fight for themselves. And whether that is a blessing or a curse that has been placed inside of me, that's just who I am, and that's just who God has made me. But over time, you have to learn how to deal with whatever gifts, situations, or whatever you're dealt with in order to be able to function in this life. And a lot of people struggle with that. A lot of people struggle. And so I've dealt with something for over 20-something years. That at the time I was going through what I was going through, I made a conscious decision that instead of continuing to fight, that I would just bow to and bow out to protect my children. And sometimes our choices spills over, because if you don't deal with them, and this is what I've learned, they find a way of coming back. So that not only you can deal with them, but the people involved can deal with what they did. And you can help guide those that now they're having to deal with certain things because of things you may have not dealt with that you could have in the past and you chose not to. Has reared up again in your life. And this is where I'm at. This is where I'm at. And every time I try to speak on it, I'm burdened with it. It's like a heavy burden on my heart. And so it's now time for me to face it, so I can help the one I need to help now face what they're going through. Oh, y'all. There's a thing that goes along, like y'all all know by now because I've talked about it. And I even had friends come on my lives that are part of my world when it comes to that. But we are a military family. And I've been a military family ever since I was 4 years old. From my dad, who did 26 years, to my ex-husband, who did a total of about probably near 10 years of himself between the Navy and the Army. From various family members in the military, my son-in-laws who have joined the armed forces. So the military is our life. And it's intertwined. And I'm sure a lot of people intertwine their lives with the military. But there is something that has been going on, and even now with the situation that's rearing its ugly head now, from talking with my dad, that's been going on even when he was a young soldier. So it ain't nothing new. It's allowed to keep happening over and over. Now, when he was in the service, of course, it was a little bit stricter back in his day. It wasn't no nonsense military. And so if certain folks found out about things, then they could handle it, and they would handle it themselves. And maybe that's what got it on the path that it's on in today's time and in my time when I was a military spouse. That it has it structured because of that, the way it is now. And you would think in over 40-something years that something would have changed for the better. And in my 20-something years that I've dealt with it, when I was going through it and when it affected my life and the course of my life and how my life went, you would have thought at some point things would have gotten changed for the better, or at least in the right direction for a change. And it hasn't. It's only gotten worse. And the things that military spouses go through, and I say spouses, I'm not going to say women. I'm not going to just say women, because there are some men in this situation as well, because their wives are in the military. The things that they go through, as being a military spouse, they're governed under military law as well as the civilian law. But when it comes to anything happening with this military will always trump civilian life. And then, which typically means that you have to let the military handle it when it happens in the military before you could seek help outside. Now, certain things are now put into place where if your life is in danger, then you can get temporary orders that will go from civilian life to military life and be in effect 100%. But that's the extent of where it goes, Because although the spouse is military because of the husband, when it comes to problems where the husband or the wife who's in the military, because of the service member, should I say, because if there's problems that arise with the service member, then the service member typically will always be looked out for when it comes to the military, because their first concern is their soldier and protecting their soldier. And then in my situation, I was blessed, because while I was going through what I was going through, there was a sergeant, a commander. It was an actual sergeant up under the commander that still had those morals inside him that was in my dad's time. He was a no-nonsense soldier. He didn't tolerate his soldiers doing this or his soldiers doing that go against the morale of that uniform. And if he found his soldier at fault, he dealt with his soldier. And then he made sure that whatever his soldier lacked in, he made sure he got it right. So there was someone in my situation that if it wasn't for this person, then I can't even imagine how life would have been, because life was hard even with him. So I can only imagine what life would have been without this man. So I owe what sanity I had to him, the ability for me to be able to even try to start over, to him. Because I could have been like so many other people. I knew laws. I knew how to fight. And ain't too many people was gonna come at me that way. But what I didn't know was military. Because my extent of the military was, I was a military brat, now I'm a military spouse. So, to share a little bit about my story, me and my ex-husband had gotten remarried for the second time. I left my job with the city of Jacksonville, where I made the most money I've ever made in my life at that job. I left a life behind of having nice apartments, multiple cars, money in the bank, vacations, and everything anybody would probably want, especially as a single mother at that time of 4 kids. My life was pretty good, you know. I struggled here and there with certain things every now and then, but for the most part, I worked multiple jobs to make sure I provided for my family. I didn't believe in assistance. I didn't believe in getting on food stamps. I didn't believe in, oh, because I got 4 kids, we got to stay in the projects. If I had to, I worked 2 and 3 jobs to provide for my family. And my kids were going to have the best regardless of what their mother's situation was. But at 4 kids, it was my 4 girls. Me and my ex-husband at the time, we were trying to mend our relationship and get back together. And so I remarried him. At this point, he was now from the Navy to the Army. And he was stationed in Fort Stewart, Georgia is where he was stationed at, which ironically was the place I grew up in as a teenager myself. So, of course, a lot of memories flooding back from my childhood and stuff like that. Initially, we wasn't on the base. We stayed off the base. So, I left that lifestyle behind in order to have my family together. I wanted my children to have a life that I had. Yeah, I had a mother and I had a father. We had stuff. We always had a nice place to stay. We traveled. We did things to the outside looking in. We had it all. You know, we had our issues there too. You know, but I wanted to provide for my kids, if I could, the lifestyle of a 2-parent home. And no matter what I built for me and my children, if I could have that for them and have the father and the mother together. Now, 2 of my kids, they weren't from my ex-husband. They were from a guy I used to date out of high school. Right after high school, in fact. I was introduced to him by my best friend because she was dating his best friend, which is a crazy story all in itself. But my other 2 at the time was from my ex-husband. And although my older two girls knew who their father was, and they loved their dad. Well, one, she overly loved her father, and the other one, they had issues, but deep down, she still loved her dad. They knew who their father was, but they took my ex-husband as their father. So then there was not really no big issues when it came to a family. Like, their dad wasn't like, these my kids, you're not gonna have my, nah, he wasn't like that. In fact, his mom looked at my ex-husband, me and my ex-husband kids as her grandkids, and they weren't. And my older two kids' their dad looked at my other children as his, and they was not. So it wasn't nothing like that. To us, we were just one big family. But to my ex, he never did care for my older kid's father. And so there was always a rift when it came to me and him. But I was with my ex, and I don't believe in cheating. I don't believe in doing all that. So no. But he still had his own insecurities, Now, why he got back with me to this day, it feels like it was more so to get back at me than to be with me. Because our first marriage, and I will always tell anybody this, I've always been hard on a man when it comes to a man. I don't put up with a lot of stuff when it comes to a man. I just don't. And then when me and him got together, initially I loved him. I cared about him. But, I made the money. I did this. So, I had that's how my head was, And he just would not do things like I felt at the time like a man should do. Now, what he did do, he loved his kids. He loved me at the time. I really do believe he did. But it was just certain things he just either wouldn't, to me, it seemed like he just wouldn't get right. And so we had a lot of arguments because of stuff he lacked as a man to do for his family and provide for his family sometimes and stuff like that. Which, if I was wiser during that time, then I would have known to just pray for him and stick by him and encourage him. That's what I should have done. But in my younger years, I was not that person, And I would come off harsh to him sometimes. Some would even say a little belittling, So I own up to that. I have always owned up to that. Even before we got back together, because that was my thing, I was remorseful for my attitude, the way I carried myself as a woman, the way I could have done things better, even though he wasn't the perfect husband, but he was trying, right? There was no infidelity in our relationship. There was none of that. It was more so just, he did lie a lot. Boy lied a lot. He lied a lot. He couldn't keep a job after he got out of the Navy. He struggled, he was childlike, a lot. He just wasn't being a man. And so it forced me to kick back in. Well, I wouldn't even say forced me to kick back in, because I was always that at that time, I was always the go-getter, the hustler, the one that went out and made my money and did whatever and had this and had that. So, okay. But if you either finna be a man or I don't need to be with you. And that's just my take on it. And that's how my stance was. But, I probably came off a little hard. And what eventually, from all the arguing and fussing and just not getting along with each other, eventually our relationship, our first marriage, it broke apart. And for a long time, I beat myself up about that, because I said if I would have been a little bit wiser when it came to being a wife, if I would have been a little bit more understanding, even though he had his issues, if we would have went to counseling, which we did. We went to counseling, but we went to counseling too late. We should have went to counseling before the marriage. We should have went to counseling during the marriage, because we both were young and just didn't really know how a marriage could work. I knew to keep the house clean, work, pay, do whatever, and that was fine. But I guess I never really knew what it took to be a true wife and stand by your husband even when he's lacking and being a helpmate. And so for that, I was at fault. So I've always took that burden of my first marriage, even though my ex-husband, he did some stuff. I took the bulk of the reason why our marriage failed the first time. And I took it as if when he got back with me the second time after, everything else come in hindsight once everything happened. But I took that after he got back with me, our second time. Because when he came back to me at this point in my life, I had surrendered myself to God. I was in the church. I still was doing what I needed to do to take care of me and my children. I was more humble because now I was learning how to be a godly woman and not just a woman with an attitude and say this and that. And so I saw a lot of my faults in a lot of mistakes that I had made. But when you do some stuff to people, when you say things to people, so I've always had to look at that as well. You can't say how they're going to react based off of you're sorry, because the damage has already been done. So to me, now looking in, I always look at that and say, well, maybe he only really got back with me because he wanted me to pay and treat me the way I came off to him in our initial marriage. But I couldn't see it for that because all I could see was I wanted my family back together. I saw my faults. I wanted to reestablish our marriage, but it was too late. Whoever I thought he was the first time, he no longer was this person. But he showed a different side. Now, when he came back, he showed the person that I had once knew. The love was there. He was very loving. He was very attentive. He wanted his family back and stuff like that. So I was blindsided. Our other lining issue was his mom. His mom was white, of course, and I'm black. And his dad was Puerto Rican. His dad loved our relationship. Even to this day, he be making jokes. Are y'all gonna get back together for a third time? No, sir, not gonna happen. So, his dad loved me. His mom did not from the beginning. Matter of fact, she told me he shouldn't be with me because I was black. That if we had kids, there'll be mud baby. I caught it all from her. He ain't finna take care of you and them big kid. I got it all. And that was one of the things that kind of threw a rage up inside me because he never would stand up for his family. Like, you let your mom talk about us like this and you will never stand up, And me being the way I was raised never to be disrespectful to nobody's mom. I don't care, that's your mom. I ain't gonna be disrespectful to her. But hey, at some point she better back off because now my mouth gonna get reckless, So for I took a lot from her before I finally said enough is enough. You got I went off and I went and she caught it. And this was in our first beginning of our relationship. And so when at one point when he tried to stand up for his family and he pulled away from his mom and started trying to take more responsibility with his family, she turned a cold heart against me because now it was as if I was pulling her son away from her. And she wasn't finna have that. And when we got back together, that was one of my concerns. I was like, I hope you've gotten over this because I can't go through that with you no more with her because I know how her stance is. I know how she is, and she's never showed any remorse to me or my children or anything else, no matter what I tried to do. But he made it seem like, oh no, his mom don't control his life the way she did then. He wanted his family back and stuff like that. So part of me feel like when he did it, he was sincere at a certain point, but something happened. where that turned, because going into our marriage, everything it seemed great. You know, everything was fine. Then it started right before he went to he got called out to Iraq. He had to go there. He was going out for trainings and stuff like that. It turned to he was online looking, meeting and talking to people online. I'm like, you know, what's going on going here? You know, I ended up getting pregnant during that time, and that's the story I've shared about my other son, where I ended up losing that child because of all the stress. And I'm assuming it was all the stress I was under, you know, the fact he was pending to leave to go to Iraq, and all the other stuff that we were going through at that time in our marriage. And I sort of went through a depression during that time where I couldn't cope. I couldn't cope with life. I think I shut down. And I know that didn't help the relationship, because I completely shut down after I lost my child. To the point where my cousin had to come and get my children because I couldn't function. I couldn't function. I couldn't. And so I'm sure that took a toll on our relationship, being that it was that new. We still had issues. He had a lot of financial burden because he took on the responsibility of me coming there, because I left Jacksonville, came to Georgia. He wanted me to quit my job. I did, listening to him as my husband, you know. But when I did that, he couldn't handle my bills, because my bills were far over what he could sustain as military. And so therefore it was, I'm finna go work. And then it was an argument, I gotta work. No, you're not finna go work, because all you're gonna do is spend your time working, and you know, I'm getting ready to go out to a war. And I'm like, well, we can't manage. We're not living. Like, we were struggling so bad. But he did not want me to work. He wanted me home. He wanted me there, you know. Then when I shut down, that caused problems, you know. Now, we were staying outside of the base, so a lot of our issues were because he didn't really make a lot of money for rent, for my car, for all these bills I had, and I'm not working. And so we had applied for base housing, which we ended up getting approved. We ended up getting a brand new house on the military base. They had just built these houses up. His name got called up. We moved on post, which relieved us a lot, because we didn't have to worry about rent and lights and stuff like that. But by that time, by the time it took me to get on that base, us to get on the base, I lost my car because he couldn't pay for the car. It was, mind you, this was a brand new car. Car ended up getting repoed. Stuff was getting shut down because I didn't have bills. Me and him arguing because I'm like, I got to go. You go. Then you're not my wife. I'm not your husband. You're not. And part of me felt like he was doing it because of who I was originally. You know, I was always the one who's saying, you can't provide, you can't take care of, you know, but I was no longer that person. But in his eyes, I'm sure he probably still saw that person. And so he was trying to prove a point to me, but our life was dwindling downward big time. So we ended up getting saved once we got on that military base. But during that time, you know, he had started talking to women online. I had started finding stuff, so that aggravated more arguments. It was like it was a constant argument every single day after I lost the baby. When we finally got on the base, it relieved a little bit, but then it was the family tension because he was getting ready to go off to war. And so my dad had made a proposal that the family come together and be there together just in case he go off to war and never come back. Because my dad knew how it was. He had served in 2 wars himself, you know, so he already knew what it was. Matter of factly, he even went overseas as a contractor after the military, so he knew what he was getting ready to go into. So it was like, spend as much time as you can. It's crazy over there, you know. Y'all want to be a family as much as possible. So my dad had proposed that because we was low on funds, we didn't really have money at all. We didn't. Out because he was trying to. We ended up getting a used van. He was trying to pay for that van. we had small kids and stuff like that, barely able to keep food up in the house because his pay wasn't all that great at the time. My dad proposed that the family got together and we all come to my house, which was the house on base. And we had to be a family before my husband got deployed. And his mom fought back. So my dad was like, well, tell his mom, because we were, at this point, we were trying to, well, the family got to squash this. We got to come together. Okay, he's getting ready to leave. It's time for us to be a family because we got to stay connected while he's over there, So my dad was like, he'll pay for his mom and his dad to come to the Georgia because they was in Illinois, and my parents were going to drive down, and we'll all be a family, spend as much time as we can with each other before my husband had to be deployed. But in mind you, this was around the Christmas holiday, so that was another reason why, because it was like we spend Christmas together and stuff like that. Well, unbeknownst to me at the time, my mother-in-law got in my ex-husband's head and convinced him he needed to be with her, because if he go to Iraq and get hurt or he get killed or something like that, then she's gonna lose her son, which is not her only son. She has, not to say that's an excuse, but she has another son who she shuns because he's bisexual. I mean, he's not bisexual, he's actual gay, and you look upon him as if he's nobody. I mean, regardless of what his sexuality is, that's still your child. But she had this stronghold over my husband. So once again, instead of him standing up for his family, he went off to be with his mom and left me there at the house with the kids, no money and stuff. So my parents ended up coming down to spend time with me. He was down there spending time with his family. And of course, that's where all the rest of the story takes place, where he, according to him, he said the first day he left, he ended up getting robbed. When he stopped to go rest at a rest stop, somebody robbed him. And then, which should have been his sign to bring your behind back home, because you shouldn't have left your family to begin with. But he ended up going down there. He ended up meeting a couple of people down there, which I didn't know at the time. But he ended up meeting a couple of women down there, and I guess he was lying to them, telling him whatever, because the wife and kids were nowhere in the picture in none of these stories, which I later found out. And he met various people. He can end up coming back home a couple of days before it was time for him to ship out. And mind you, not supporting us, not doing absolutely nothing at this point, other than the bare minimums at this point. He was barely doing anything at that point, because me and him was arguing, and so he felt like, yes, because he was the one who was controlling everything, that he could do whatever. So I had pretty much made up in my mind, okay, I'm finna go get me a job, I ain't got time for this, but we need to work on our marriage and stuff, Of course, I guess he probably saw that as a bit defiant, that because I was going against what he wanted. But I'm looking at, okay, here's our situation. We're struggling. You're getting ready to go out to war. He was like, you need to stay home with the kids. You don't need to be working. That's all you want to do is work. But we're struggling. We got these kids, and it was bad. And it might have looked like we had a lot, but nah. We just had stuff that I had accumulated before we had got remarried. We didn't have nothing other than that. I mean, I had a lot of stuff, but it was what I had from the past. It wasn't nothing that we was building on from where we was moving forward. And he ended up coming back to the house a couple of days before. We ended up talking. We was talking about how we was going to go through counseling when he got back, and all this other stuff. And we ended up, of course, being with each other. That's how my son got conceived. And I'm telling you, that's why I call him a miracle child. Cause baby, the one time only it worked, it happened, and God blessed us, and you are here now 20 years later, because other than that, you wouldn't have been here. He ended up leaving, and it was crazy, like, because it was weird, because I told him, I said, I feel like something's telling me that I was pregnant. He was thinking, oh, you're just thinking this because you lost the baby. You're still sort of, that's in the back of your head. You missed the baby. You're not pregnant. I'm like, no, something's telling me I am. Which I don't know how I knew this, because he had only been there for a couple of days. We only did it once. But for some reason in my heart, it just felt like I was pregnant. But I told him I would wait until after I missed my cycle, because there's no way of knowing, to confirm. And then, you know, if I do, I'll go take a blood test and see what not. Lo and behold, yeah, it was, because he was gone. But unbeknownst to me, you know, he went over there and was, I guess, trying to replace me as his wife at this point. And was talking to multiple women. In fact, I think it was like 19 women that he had promised once he got back to the state. He was going to marry them. They was going to have a family. In fact, he ended up impregnating an Iraqi woman. But what ended up happening is she lost the baby. Now, I found all this out through emails once I wasn't hearing from him, because after he left, at first he was calling, then it kind of tapered off. He wasn't saying anything to us, and at first he was sending stuff to us, but then it slowly started dwindling away. We weren't receiving no funding from him. We weren't getting nothing from him. We weren't getting no help from him at all. I mean, it completely stopped. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? I wasn't hearing from him, so I was contacting his commander, his rear detachment, trying to figure out what was going on. Is my husband okay? I mean, I don't know what's happening. I haven't heard from him. He wrote me. He didn't do anything, which caused me to go, you know, because like I told y'all, I know how to find out anybody I want to. And I knew my husband, so he was kind of predictable when it came to his stuff. So I went inside of his email. I used the code I thought he probably would have used, that got up inside that email, baby. And when I was in that email, I had it all, because it was right there. Because that's how he was communicating with all these people. And I saw it was 19 women he was talking to. And I'm like, oh my God. Mind you, at this point, I'm well into my pregnancy. Because I think I went through denial that he was, you know, now you with the bull, you go from this to this, for really? But I was in denial, and if it wasn't for my dear friend, who her husband was a recruiter at the time, who told me, girl, you better, she talked so funny, she like, girl, you better just in South Carolina, you better go check her. These soldiers around here, they around here losing their mind. They around here filing for a divorce on their wife while they over there. I'm like, how they filing for a divorce from their wife, and don't they gotta be over here? Like, I'm like, I never heard of anything like that. And it was like, girl, she like, girl, no, they could, you know. So she was keeping me up on it, because I was a little clueless when it came to that. Her and her husband, and then she would reach out to her husband, because he was over there too, and it was like, could you try to find him, make sure he's okay? So that was how I was getting, whether or not he was alive or he was dead. So he did what he did. Finally got in contact with him. He was like, he all right. He over here. I told him he need to call his wife and his kids, you know, because they're worried about him. And yeah, and he called at one point, but it was like kind of like a dry call, like, yeah, I love you, okay, you know. And I'm like, okay, you're acting weird, like, what's wrong? And so he was like, no, nothing, how's the baby, how's the kids, you know. He was emailing me. Now, when he wrote me on the email, he would write long paragraphs on emails or whatever, and it just sounds so sincere, like he loves us, he misses us and everything. But then you weren't doing anything, and then you was barely calling. And of course, I'm taking into consideration he's over in war. It's not like he can just go pick up the phone and call us, right? So that's the way my mind was going. And that's what I'm thinking. So my friend told me, girl, you need to start looking a little bit deeper than that, because maybe something else is going on. I'm like, girl, he wouldn't try me like that. And so she was like, girl, these soldiers, you know, sometimes I used to say, well, do she know something I don't know? but no, she was just telling me like it is. She was just basically telling me what she had been hearing from other soldiers were doing in, you know, her husband's platoon, and maybe I was falling victim to what he was doing. Mind you, I'm still fully pregnant, having a hard time with the pregnancy because of the miscarriage, and then I was gestational diabetic, so it was just so much stress. Well, when I finally got into his email to find out what was really going on, and had to learn about these 19 different women. This Iraqi woman, he had done got pregnant, and she had done. I'm like, okay, this nigga wrong. You done it. You done slept with an Iraqi woman. It's these horror stories I've heard from my father about the different diseases that are over there, and you out here sleeping with an Iraqi woman? Like, I was just mind blown at this point. So, I end up reaching out to his parents to let them know that, you know, what in the world is going on? Like, to let them know, this is what your son is doing. Of course, me and his mom ended up getting into it, and she was telling me how she told him to live his life. Don't worry about me and the kids, because he got to make it back home. So whatever he needs to do, just focus on him and just leave us alone. Of course, that pissed me the heck off at that point. I ended up going off on her. Forget about disrespecting your mama. That B had to get it. She was about to get it that day. So I ended up cussing her out, cussing her husband out, and everybody. How dare y'all tell my husband? What you think he was going to do? If he wasn't talking to his wife and his kids, what did you think he was going to do? Exactly what he did. And so me and her went and got into a huge freaking argument. At that point, you know, I was in the church at the time, but man, it hurt. All kind of hurt that came over me. Like, all hurt had filled my heart at that point. My world was breaking down. Like, I couldn't focus. I couldn't focus on the church. I couldn't focus on absolutely nothing because my world was just crumbling down. And how could he do this to us? How could he put us in this situation? Could he do this to his kids? Here we are again. And for what? Like, because your mama told you to do this? That's your excuse because your mom told you to neglect your family? I'm not having this crap. So, I end up learning that he had re-enlisted, because homeboy ain't tell me none of this stuff. You know, I didn't know he had got re-enlisted or whatever. At that point is when I turned to his rear detachment, the first sergeant that I was telling you about earlier in the story. And he really put his foot down, and he stuck his neck out there for me and my family. And he got us emergency AER loans to help us get what we needed for the family. He tried to help as much as possible because, like, the military don't really like getting involved in civilian lifestyle when it comes to when you're separating from, and far as they knew, we was probably going to end up in the divorce court at this point. The military don't like to get involved with that type of stuff. So I'm really blessed that this fell on him to do what he needed to do for me and my children, because we had absolutely nothing. Here I was pregnant. We were losing everything. My husband around here doing all this other stuff or whatever and not taking care of home. And in the military, I just always thought, you know, the soldier's responsibility was to take care of their family, you know, take care of home. And if you're caught doing stuff that you wasn't supposed to do, if you're not taking care and providing for your family, if you're around here committing adultery and stuff like that, and especially in a foreign country, that stuff wouldn't be tolerated. But of course, he was over in Iraq and I'm over in the States trying to get whatever kind of help that I can. So, which of course caused more issues with my pregnancy and stuff like that. And I ended up finding out he had got re-enlisted in the military, and I had to make a really hard decision because at the time I love my husband. I wasn't trying to hurt him, even though he hurt me. But I found out that he had got re-enlisted. Now, what he must have forgot he did was, before he left, he gave me all his power of attorneys and everything else for me to do whatever I needed to do, right? Just in case, in the event something happened. Who would have thought this would have been the stuff that happened? More so than the war, right? So I was talking with some ladies at the church and the pastor at the church, and I was talking with his first sergeant, and they all, and my friend, my friend girl, because that's how we called each other, friend girl. And she was like, "Girl, you better take that power of attorney and get you some help." I mean, so I kind of battled with that for a minute. It wasn't, I had a hard time doing it. Even though I had the paperwork, I could do it. I can do what I needed to do. It just felt wrong for me to kind of go against my husband to try to get money. Almost like I'm stealing from my freaking husband. Like, who does this? So, it really took a toll on me. So he ended up re-enlisting in the military. I think he got like $60,000. And I mean, homeboy, he was trying to set me up and leave me and the kids with nothing. He took the money and he put it in his father's account. Now, this is when I found out about this, I called back and I went off on his dad, because I'm like, how you gonna help your son lie? Like, how did y'all even get this done anyway? Because him and his dad had the same name. But what they didn't realize was, well, the people that was doing the paperwork, I guess, for the bank, they didn't realize his dad's name was, his first and his last name matched his son, of course, without the junior, but his dad didn't have a middle name. His son did, which he was named after his grandfather, his mom's father. So that was the split. And I'm like, so how are you getting his money in your account? It made absolutely no sense, trying to divert it from me so I couldn't have anything. But when I found out about his reenlistment, and I did not do it right away, but after I found the extent that he went up to trying to leave me and my children with nothing, I ended up taking the power of attorney. I opened up an account with a military bank and used the power of attorney to access his funding from his parents that I found from his account, and transferred some of the money over to me and the kids. And then I blocked it out and I started transferring the money and splitting the money up. So I had money in that account. I started sending money to family just in case this whole thing went haywire, so me and the kids could be protected. I sent money to people I thought I could trust. And you notice I'm finna use the word thought, to hold on to some of this money for me, just in case he tried to fight me to get it back, because it was inside his dad's account versus it being in his account, but it was his money, and I could clearly see where it had transferred from there, but he was trying to keep it away from me. So I ended up doing that. I ended up taking $15,000 out of the 60,000, which everybody told me you should have took all of it, or you at least should have took half. Come on now. And I was like, nah, I'm just trying to make sure, just in case I have to start over, I can get up out of here. I wasn't trying to take it all from him. But of course, when he found that out, he was pissed off and furious. Boy, had his dad, along with him, had tried to press charges against me, saying that I had stole money out of his account. And it was on at that point. So then I became all kind of bees. You're selfish. You're just trying to take my money. And I'm like, I'm selfish. You're just trying to leave us with nothing. Like, I could have took it all. I could have took over half. I could have did a lot of things, but chose not to do it. But I was just trying to make sure we was okay. So if I was trying to be nasty, I would have did those things versus just trying to ensure me and my family was okay. But of course, I became all the bees and all this other stuff, and he was gonna take me to court, and I was gonna go to jail. I mean, he tried. Homeboy had went down there, and once he had first his dad did it because it was his account. His dad had did it, and they tried to do a police report against me, saying that I stole money. I had to go through all this stuff, explaining what I did and all this other stuff. Then they tried to take me to court in Illinois. Mind you, I'm in Georgia. So, of course, now I had to use some of the money to try to represent myself on all this stuff that they were trying to do. And for a lot of it, I could handle it on my own. But then it was times where I didn't understand what Illinois law was. Like, I understood what Florida law was at the time. And at the time, I didn't even know how Georgia law worked. I just knew about Florida because that's where I studied. And so it was just a mess. Mind you, still, all this going on while I'm still carrying my son, still trying to take care of my children and stuff like that. Well, when he got back, of course, before he got back, he used his mom to file for a divorce, which I've never heard of anything like this in my life. His mom filed for a divorce for me while he was in Iraq. Because that's what I was like, how you file for a divorce and you in Iraq? I mean, how they do that? So he ended up giving a power of attorney to his mom, where she went to the courts in Illinois and filed for a divorce. Right? But instead of her saying that she knew where I was, she acted like she didn't know where I was. She said she had no clue. The last place she knew I was in Jacksonville, Florida. And I didn't know all this until, my friend was like, girl, you better check his home. Because I'm checking, me, in my mind, I'm checking Georgia, because Georgia's where we're living in, or either Florida. Like, okay, I can understand if the military wants to allow him to file for his home state. Okay, let me go. Nope, nobody ain't got nothing. So I'm like, nah, there's nothing. I keep calling. Nobody says anything about a divorce. So far as a divorce, I did not know if one was pending or not, But lo and behold, he had used his mom to file for a divorce for me. And she proudly went down there because this was her wish anyway. She didn't want us to get together to begin with. So she went down there to the courthouse and she filed for a divorce in Illinois, which they didn't notify. I didn't find out about it until when my friend finally was like, Tamara, you sure with everything he doing? Like, it just seemed like his next step will be a divorce. I said, well, you would think that, but he ain't found nothing. And she was like, girl, you better check his home state to see what's going on, to see. And so what she did was she went online and she found a news clipping in Illinois saying they was looking for me. And I'm like, looking for me where? They know where I'm at. What are you looking for me at? And so she was like, girl, this clipping say they don't know where you at. And she was the one who brought that to my attention. They say they don't know where you at, girl, and he trying to file for a divorce. You got 30 days to respond. I'm like, what? So when I finally saw that, I went in, I'm trying to file for the paperwork. Of course, I'm not in Illinois. They're telling me I to do stuff there. So I end up having to hire an attorney. Thank God I had the money. I ended up having to use some of that money to hire an attorney to try to get it kicked out from the state of Illinois and brought back to Georgia. Because first of all, how in the world is my husband filing anything against me when he's in Iraq and I'm here? And who filed for a divorce? No. So I'm trying to figure out, when did all this happen? So, as a long story short, the mama was the one who filed for a divorce. And by the time I got the attorney on the case, and he was, oh my God, he pissed me off so bad. I ended up having to take a bus down there. Matter of fact, it wasn't a bus, I drove. I ended up having to drive down to Illinois in order to go to court to try to get it kicked out. But when I finally found out and had to kind of do it on my own with the sorry behind attorney that I had hired over the phone, it was pretty much done with. They gave him a divorce for namesake because they said I didn't address the issue before the 30-day notice was up. And I was like, well, how could I address the issue of the 30 days if I did not even know about the 30 days? I literally just found out about all this. Like, how can y'all do that? And who filed for the divorce? Because he ain't even first here. Like that. Which ended up being his mom filed for the divorce when we got all the paperwork and stuff. And so they was telling me, the attorney told me to take it back to Georgia to fight everything there. Because as far as the state of Illinois was concerned, he had a divorce. And I'm like, what do you mean he had a divorce? So what did this mean for me and my kids? We're in the military housing. And now he got a piece of paper saying he was no longer married to me. So I had to go back home and file for a countersuit against him. And at the time I wasn't, because in my mind I'm thinking we're divorced. So I'm left with nothing. There's no spousal support because I didn't work. There's no child support. I'm not getting nothing from this man. Like, so I'm on my own. So I'm like, I have nothing but the little bit of money I did have left outside of what I spread it around or whatever. I was like, I'm gonna have to represent myself. And so now I had to get in the books and go to the library, learn the statutes in Georgia real fast. I'm commuting all this stuff in, representing myself for myself, from what I learned from schooling from Florida, and I'm cross-referencing everything because I don't have the money now to hire an attorney that like I did this other one. I spent almost $4,000 on this freaking attorney, and he did absolutely nothing for me. Okay. So I'm back to Georgia. I'm trying to get my case prepared in Georgia so I can get some type of support, some type of spousal support, some type of child support. But he already has a divorce in his hand. So where does that leave me and my kids? I'm gonna end this right here, and I'll pick back up with this story to let y'all know the rest of the story, and also to tell you how the military really handles the spouses when certain things like this happen, or even more, and how they're not right, y'all. But I'm gonna pick back up with this story. You know, I find this like real therapeutic just to be able to talk about it finally after 20 something years. Thanks for listening.